Francine Simone, and I am here today with a book hype review on Wink Poppy Midnight. Now, I've seen this book making its rounds on BookTube and on Twitter and on Goodreads. I've just seen this beautiful cover everywhere. So I picked it up from the library. I didn't mean to read it, but I've been in the middle of reading another book, Akamoff, and I needed a break. It's really thick, and it's a lot of fantasy and whatever. So I needed a break. I just picked up something small and quick, and I settled on this. So let's get into the usual. I review it on quality based on character, plot, and world, so let's just go ahead and jump into it. So this book is fairly popular for having like the shortest blurb that actually tells you nothing. Every story needs a hero. Every story needs a villain. Every story needs a secret. Wink Poppy Midnight, 2 girls, 1 boy, 1 summer, 1 bad thing. What really happened? Someone knows and someone is lying. That's it. That's the entire blurb on this. You're not going to get anything else, anything more. So it's set up kind of like a whimsical mystery, but I'll get into that when we get to plot. But for now, let's talk about characters. So as far as characters, we have Wink, Poppy, and Midnight. Wink is like this weird flower child at a first glance. She has a very magical presence and a childlike wonder, which isn't a surprise because she's extremely obsessed with fairy tale stories. We have Poppy. She's a pretty crazy chick who wants to live a real life, but she's surrounded by frivolity. So she ends up taking out on others in very cruel and mean ways. At first glance, she just looks like the mean girl at this school, but once you really dig deeper, you realize that she's actually a bit darker than that. She's the type of person that likes to feel real emotions and not the, I guess what you consider the norm, stereotypical life. You have all of those labels and stereotypes, like if you look at just television. She's the type of person who is stuck on that television life, and she doesn't like that. She wants something real. And so because she doesn't get that, because she wants to feel that realness, especially from other people, she tends to take it out on other people to see their real emotions come out. And usually it's a very ugly thing, and that's Poppy. Then we have Midnight. He's the boy who's stuck between childhood whimsy and the need to be next to something as real and dangerous as Poppy. Overall, for character authenticity, taking the entire book into consideration, I do give it a 5 out of 5. I think the characters are very over the top. That is a part of the storytelling, especially since it's set up like a lot of middle grade whimsy type of stories. But the characters still do have depth to them. We get a POV from each one, so we do get to see their inner workings, and I think that adds a lot to the authenticity of the characters. It never really surprised me with their actions, and the consequences are always very logical. And there are some really interesting parts in this book where they have to work through a lot of their actions and the consequences of their actions, so I thought that was very interesting and very well done. Let's get on to world. Now, as far as world is considered, the setting is extremely lush. The setting takes place in a small town where clearly there is the divide between those who have and live in town, and they live in these nice houses, they spend money on things, and then there are the people who live kind of in the backwoods. Now, whether they have money or not, that's up to speculation. However, people live on farms, they're living a more secluded life, a little bit more of a down-to-earth life. That's kind of where Wink lives, and although she lacks the down-to-earthness because she does have that kind of whimsy around her, the setting around her is very down-to-earth, including her siblings and her mother and seemingly her older brother. So I definitely give this setting in the world a 5 out of 5 because it was really hard not to smell things and not to taste the taste and not to really be in it with them. I was craving some strawberries galore while reading this book. Now I'm going to put other characters in this category as world because the other characters do make up the world. I thought that the other teen characters were fine and well done. They were presented enough and they were given enough of presence on the page in their differing ways that I thought was interesting, and I thought the way the main characters viewed them was very interesting. However, the adults in this book were extremely vacant, if not missing, off the page, especially where Poppy was concerned, and I thought that lended to that cliche of the missing parent syndrome. And when you're watching that teen movie and this teen's throwing a house party and they never have parents around, and you're just like, bitch, who is that kid? What their parents do, and why are their parents never home? If you got all that money, hire a nanny. I know she's 14, 15, or 16, but for real, come on. We've all seen the movies. We all know what happens when you leave your child alone at the age of 16 for weeks at a time. So I had a really hard time, especially giving Poppy and who she was. Also, I had a hard time because there were no teachers present. There were a lot of acts that were done in this book, but there were no consequences of their violent acts because there were no adults present at all. And I thought that left the world hanging quite a bit. It was like a world made up of crazy kids with no type of adult interactions. And even when the adults were on the page, they weren't really interacting. They weren't really involved in a lot that happened they were moving, but they didn't direct the plot. They didn't circumvent these characters. So it just felt really flat for me there. So overall, because of the adults missing and how that made way for a lot of plot holes, I gave world building a 3 out of 5. Now let's go ahead and talk about plot. Plot is one of the biggest issues I had with this book. I know what the book was going for, and I like the idea of the book that, people are more than what they seem on the surface. I think that's something that we already know. So it was going for moral ambiguity, and since I am all about moral ambiguity, I'm a real harsh critic when it is done, but done as a gimmick. For instance, on the cover of this book, it says, a hero, a villain, a liar, who's who. So it's kind of like a mystery thing going on, and I thought that because of the way this book was actually written, the way that it's structured, it's a heavy internal book. It's not external, and this whole thing is based on like an external plot, like a mystery would be. The who's who done it, who is what. And I think because there are only 3 characters, it's quite obvious what's going on with the setup of the book. So if it's going to be this obvious because of how everything is presented, then the book should have really focused on the internal struggles of each of these characters. And it did up until the ending, when it took up a whole mystery plot. And I was just like, no, because this isn't even a mystery. It's quite obvious. I mean, the way the events unfolded, sure, I didn't exactly know how much each person was involved and what happened and this and that. But this isn't a mystery. This is really a retelling of these people's lives. This book, from the beginning all the way up to even the end, I would say, is screaming at you that it's about their internal struggles and it's about the internal. And even though some of that does get settled in the end, it should have focused on that more than it did that whole little external spiel about this, that, and the other, because at the end you just end up feeling cheated, because then it just becomes a character withholding information from a reader, and that's a very difficult thing for me to believe, especially when it's in first person, that a character can willingly withhold information without thinking about it, especially when they're constantly thinking about the situation at hand. So it would have been far more interesting to just lay out all of the information on the table and to allow the reader to see what the fuck these characters did with all that information and what they were doing from the beginning, because that is where the story is. That's where the internal struggle is for each of these characters, in watching how and what they do, knowing what they know, because that's what makes you feel uncomfortable, but that's what makes you question your own perspective and know what you would do if put in the same situation. So because we were cheated out of that, it felt like this took an external plot turn, which didn't make sense to the whole structure of this internal book. So for me, I really want to dock it down to like a 3 out of 5 because it lacks that profoundness, but that's such a subjective thing for me to want it to be profound. So I ended up docking it 4 out of 5 because I think it does cheat what it was structured to be, an internal plot, and then it ended up being an external thing. I felt like it cheats the reader in that sense. However, from the beginning, from the blurb, from the outside little thing on this book, it does promise to be some type of external mystery. So does it deliver on itself? Can I question the quality of the book when it tells me it's supposed to be an external plot thing and it just turns out to be cheesy? Or can I say that it lacks in quality because everything inside of here is screaming one thing, but then we get to the end and I'm just like, what, bitch? What? That's what happened? Bitch, why you ain't tell me that from the beginning? This would have been so much better. Like, that's not really a quality thing. Maybe that's a subjective thing. So either way, I do dock it down because even if I go with the whole external mystery plot thing that just ended up being cheesy, it wasn't really delivered from the beginning to the end. It was just delivered from the blurb and then just stuck there the last 30% or 25% or so. So I just can't. If it wanted to do that, I think it would have had to stick to one POV or just do like an external narration or something along those lines. But let's go ahead and get into the recommendations. I think that if you really love whimsical type storylines, if you like a quick read, something to get you out of a slump or into something else, if you're not a fan of contemporary, but you really like fantastical elements with your contemporary, you might really enjoy this story. I mean, it is quick enough that you aren't investing your entire life in it to the end to be like, but if you really don't like being surprised by an ending that isn't really profound or isn't, it's like you knew that it was this, you just didn't know the details that went into it. Like if you're watching that one show and you're like, she did it, he did it, I already know this. I just don't know how they did it, but why are these other bitches dumb about it? Like, if you're the type of person that sits through a show like that, don't pick up this book, because you're going to know exactly what's going on, and you'll be interested to know how it happened. And when you find out how it happened, you're just going to feel like you were cheated out of a really interesting story, because none of these fucking characters thought it was worth thinking in their point of view. Overall, I give this book a 3 out of 5. I thought the character authenticity was amazing and great. But when I add the world and plot into that, it even makes me question the character authenticity sometimes. So the rating has to drop down quite a bit because of that. I do feel like this book didn't necessarily deliver what the words on the pages set out to deliver. However, it does deliver this little line: a hero, a villain, a liar, who's who. It delivers on that kind of a story. You're trying to figure out who's what. It just doesn't deliver on this kind of story very well. So again, if you like whimsical contemporary, do go ahead and pick it up. It's quick enough to get through in a day, and it's really not hard reading. And if you're just in a slump or you just need something quick, pick it up. So guys, as always, if you enjoy the reviews, if you enjoy the videos, go ahead, subscribe, hit thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought about Wink Poppy Midnight. As always, happy reading, and I will see you guys later. TTYL, ta-ta for now. Bye! Bye!